What's your drink of choice? You got one? You got
Yep.
one going there?
Yep. So I've got a big old Yeti here. Of course, I went and saw this on somewhere on social media, following Captain Morgan, ABC, and they came out with some summertime edition orange vanilla twist. So I was like, all right. So my wife was going to make some. She had some recipes she was wanting to try out for Dole whips, or the what you get at Disney or wherever. And I said, wait a minute. I said, I saw this Captain Morgan's rum for it, so we're going to try that tomorrow and see how. Make sure we got
nice
one for the kids and one, some for us. So we'll go from there. So, yeah. Okay.
Oh, cool. I saw Dole Whip. I saw Disneyland release their recipe.
Oh,
yeah.
Nobody can get to it, right? So it's like, all right, well, let's try to keep people, sucked in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right on.
All right, cool. All right, so hello, everyone. This is Paul from Drums and Rums, and today we have Erik Truelove. Erik is often recognized as the title holder of the world's most accurate drummer 4 times over. As a natural musician, at 15, he bought his first drum set, taught himself playing by ear. Erik has toured with bands in the U.S. as well as internationally in Germany, Austria, and Mexico, and he's also found himself involved in many recording projects as a drummer as well as producer. In January of 2008, 2007, 2006, Erik took home the world's most accurate drummer title at the NAMM Show in California, and again at Drum Corp International World Finals in August of 2007. Erik Truelove endorses Soultone Cymbals and Silver Fox drumsticks. Welcome, Erik, to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, great. I know we kind of both subscribe to a similar drum group on Facebook, and I think there's an awful lot of great source of information to help out fellow drummers and musicians alike. So I really appreciate you reaching out and hooking up and doing this podcast. So this will be episode number 3 of the podcast series, and this is our first online internet podcast. And so, Erik, where are you at currently?
I'm in South Houston. I've been here for just a couple of years now. I was in Tucson, Arizona for about 17 or 18 years. So.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And did you grow up in the Texas area?
No, I grew up on the West Coast. I was born in LA and grew up in Southern Oregon. Spent about 10 years in Seattle, a couple years in Anchorage, Alaska. So all up and down the West Coast, and then ended up in Tucson. And then my wife got a job here in Houston a couple years ago. So, life, sometimes takes a sharp right turn, and that's what happens. So,
that's
so
great.
As long as we can find a house where I can build a studio in it, then I'm fine with it.
Yeah. So speaking of the studio, there, you got a pretty nice setup there. You care to give a little tour there, just over your shoulder?
Yeah, I mean, it's not huge. It's on upstairs. The girl, my kids' bedrooms are upstairs, and my studio's upstairs, kind of on the opposite side. So it's fairly well soundproofed. It was just like a kind of an open game room, so I closed it off, and those cabinets back there.
Mm-hmm.
We're actually in our bedroom. The master bedroom downstairs was part of the decor that they had up on the wall. The guy that had this before built it that way, and so I kind of used that to, make the walls look kind of, I don't know if you can see it, but kind of matched around this side, and soundproofed it the best I could. And right now I got an electric kit, a TD27 set up here, for noise. It's not too loud, but right. I set up my acoustic kit sometimes too, and mic it up. And I just did a track for some folks here in Houston about a month and a half. So that was kind of cool.
Okay, very cool. So do you do a lot of remote recordings for clients, or you have a steady kind of project?
Not yet. I mean, I'm just kind of getting started in that. When I was in Tucson, I played with, lots of people there, and I knew a lot of people that owned studios. So I had a lot of session work there in person, though, not so much remote. and you know, moving to Houston here, not really knowing so many people, and just sort of taking a breather from. I had to sell my music school that I started in Tucson. I had that for about 7 or 8 years, and so that became, you know, a burden in a number of ways to manage that and keep it going. So it was kind of nice to like just go ahead and cut ties, turn that over to somebody else as far as the building that I built out in the space, and then kind of reestablish here in Houston and take a breath. And that's sort of what I've been doing the last couple of years, and noodling around, you know.
Very cool. So how'd besides buying your first kit at 15, how'd you get into drums? And so that seems, I know on a previous podcast talking with Renee on the second podcast here, he's a drummer out of a original music band out of Miami, and you know, we always interested in how where the foundation was, and you know, whether it was the pots and pans I asked him, or you know, or the Muppet Show with Animal, or whatever the case may be. How'd you get to that point in 15?
Well, I remember at 6 watching Buddy Rich on the Johnny Carson show, and just, you know, being just mesmerized by his playing and just drums at that point. I remember looking through the Sears catalogs, you know, that they used to sell, you know, a drum set and a guitar and a bass, and I was just like, oh man, I want one of those so bad, and just kind of always having that in me. And any chance I could, which wasn't very often back then, to see live music, I was always drawn to the drums. So when I got into 5th grade, you know, we got to take a music class in school, so I was pretty psyched that, okay, here's my chance. But drums weren't offered, so I took up the trumpet, which my older brothers, 2 years older than me, also was playing trumpet at the time. We're both drummers now as well. So I played trumpet in marching band and concert band for about 5 years, learned how to read music and march in the marching band. And then I finally mowed enough lawns and stacked enough wood in Oregon to buy my first drum set, and it was kind of all over from there. So,
so no, that's very interesting. Is I think there's always you know, quite a few folks I talk to. I mean, again, everyone comes in a different point, but I think would you agree that having that start on the trumpet first kind of helped your taking to the drums, and whether it's already learning how to read music or some of that structure?
Yeah, I would definitely say the structure, and also, you know, when you're marching, you're kind of right, left with your feet and counting, you know, so that part of it. When I started playing the drums, I didn't look at any books. I didn't crack a book for like 15 years.
Wow.
And I was out gigging and stuff in top 40 bands and blues bands, and, you know, just purely taking it in by ear. So, but I know that trumpet, the training that I got on the trumpet and exposure to music and understanding of structure of music and songs, you know, was definitely a help. Right. I wish I would have started, you know, cracking the books earlier or started the drums earlier, but, you know, 15 was still okay.
They say we're never too old, or never too old to learn. I think that's the saying, right? Something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess, you know, what struck me, you know, reading a little bit about your bio and checking out your website and social media as well too. So I guess, what's it like to be recognized as the world's most accurate drummer, which is pretty interesting, and let alone 3 years in a row, right?
Yeah. I wouldn't say I get recognized so much. I mean, in certain circles, yeah, I would, right. But it's not like I'm walking down the street and like, hey, I know you. But you know, it was quite a trip. It was actually my first time attending NAMM in 2006. I had had a drum endorsement from a small company, kind of a boutique company out of Phoenix, Arizona, and they took me to the NAMM show, and the Beatnik rhythmic analyzer, which is the device that they use for the world's most accurate drummer contest, was on display there for the first time. In fact, they weren't even in production yet. They had their kind of prototype models out there, and they had a big banner above their booth that, you know, are you the world's most accurate drummer? You know, come try out. And so I checked that thing out, and I was like, really cool. You know, it's a really neat device, and the phrase that they had programmed into it for this contest was pretty difficult phrase. it's a 2-measure phrase that goes from quarter notes to 32nd notes in rapid succession. Quarter notes, eighth notes, triplets, 16th notes, 16th note triplets, 32nd notes, all within 2 measures, and you keep cycling through it. And it was very similar to a pattern and an exercise that I had developed for my students that I had been teaching and working on. So it was kind of already in me to be able to do it. I just had never quite seen, if I was accurate or not doing it. But I think that's what sort of helped me clinch it the first time. And then after that, I was just on a mission to sort of like defend my title, So
as long as you don't use the term three-peat in anything, you right with that, right? Yeah, I know Phil Jackson might come come looking for some.
Yeah, exactly.
So what? So in when you went to and competed, so I mean, what was the competition like? Was there a lot of people there? I mean, how did that kind of, again, I've not been to NAMM, so not really familiar. I mean, I know kind of what it's all about, but
yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big trade show, and I think at that time, I think there would be about 75,000 attendees throughout the weekend, kind of a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday deal. I think it's up to about 100,000 now, but it's been going on for a long time. And so they had a booth in the drum section. The drum, imagine any sort of convention center having multi-levels, and there's sort of a drum level, which is definitely the most exciting and the loudest,
Right.
But so Onboard Research was the company that developed and invented the beatnik, and they also were kind of famous for one of the first people that had clip-on tuners for guitars and stuff called the IntelliTouch tuner. So they did pretty well with that. But so they had their booth set up, and basically anybody that wanted to come by and check it out could. So, probably a couple thousand people, and anywhere from someone, that's there attending the convention who just sells software or flutes or whatever that might come up and try it out and never played drums before. And yet, Vinny Appice walk up and try it out, and so it's kind of hard to gauge,
Right.
It wasn't all drummers, but it was mostly drummers, and some famous and some never heard of. So.
Okay. So it was so it was booth based, not so much everybody goes up on the stage, you sign up in advance kind of thing.
Exactly.
Like that. Okay.
Yeah.
So
they would hand.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, they would give out a T-shirt for basically anybody that got a certain score or higher. So everybody was walking around with like these "World's Most Accurate Drummer" T-shirts. It's like, wow. It was kind of funny, but
no, that's
so.
Yeah.
When I left that first NAMM show, not only was my mind blown because it was my first NAMM show, and I was like awestruck of seeing all these cool, my heroes, and I met Terry Bozzio.
Wow.
Like at the time he was my biggest drum idol, and I got to meet him and all these other things. But leaving the NAMM show, just thinking, okay, so I won this contest of World's Most Accurate Drummer. Like, what does that mean? And it kind of got into my head, and over the next couple of years, maybe a year or so, like it sort of like hindered my playing a little bit. I got way too much into my head, and it caused me to like make mistakes, because I was like, well, what if I make a mistake in front of somebody, and you don't want to be thinking like that when you're performing.
Right.
So yeah.
And let alone, right, musicians are very tough on themselves, right, when
Exactly
performing, or they know, and I think that's as you mentioned, playing in bands, there might be a part that you may miss or flub, and as most people say, the most person in a bar or wherever, they probably won't even notice it, but you notice it. Maybe your bass player, rest of the band, the drummers in the audience may notice. They may notice it, especially if it's a cover, right? So
exactly.
So that's pretty good. So you attended NAMM as a you said as an instructor for your school. That's how you're involved.
Actually, I did. I mean, the last couple of times that I went, I did because I had a NAMM membership through my school, and I attended that way. But those times when I was competing, in that contest and stuff, I went as an artist of an endorsing drum company that I was with, and that I wasn't with Soultone Cymbals at that time yet or anything like that.
Okay.
They had taken me out there. I ended up kind of working the booth years later after winning that. And then Gavin Harrison was actually the one that kind of upseated me at PASIC in, I think, 2009. He like creamed my score. I was like, okay. But so after that, they would have me, they'd fly me out to NAMM and, put me in a hotel, and I would demonstrate the beatnik to people. Cause I had, at that point, had done the kind of instructional DVD that comes with it. They also, put it up as a 3-part series on YouTube and stuff. So I had produced that video for them on how to use the machine. And so I kind of sort of worked for them, a couple times a year to go and show it, which was kind of cool. I got to demonstrate it to, lots of cool drummers and lots of cool people. So.
No, that's very cool. So you mentioned Soultone, and you said at that time you weren't endorsed by them, but so how did the endorsement come about?
Well, the first one, like I said, I was in Tucson. It was a small company out of Phoenix, and they picked me up as a, and they didn't have a booth or anything, but they would take a couple other artists to NAMM, and you get to go schmooze. And, he had hoped the guy that owned that drum company had hoped to build it up one day to have like a booth at NAMM, but he folded a couple years later. And so just by being able to go to NAMM and network, meet people, I just always had gone by the Soultone booth, and there was always so much energy and so much excitement around their booth, and so many cool players like testing out their cymbals. And I loved the sound of their cymbals. I'd always been a Zildjian guy up to that point. And, I was kind of holding out for a Zildjian endorsement, but I'm not, an A-list drummer or a B-list drummer or any of that. I'm a working class drummer, like,
Yep.
that type of thing. Play some theaters, play some, festivals a little bit, but mostly kind of bars and corporate gigs and stuff. So I decided, well, I like these cymbals a lot. They seem like a cool company, real family oriented. So I signed up with them. I think that was about 2010, maybe. So
Okay.
I've been with them like 10 years. And
wow, very cool.
Yeah, I like the cymbals a lot.
So I think that's any opportunity to obviously endorse. There's you're doing something for them and vice versa, and you're getting products to test or to utilize as well. So that's probably pretty cool. And then what about Silver Fox? I'm not too familiar with Silver Fox.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I don't know that they're around anymore.
Okay.
When I had my drum school, I was retailing their sticks, but they kind of changed hands, and then production, I was having a hard time getting ones in stock, and that was quite a while ago. And fortunately, I had enough ordered for my own personal use that I haven't run out yet. But that's the thing about the thing I loved about Silver Fox sticks is they used a proprietary finish, a hardener and a lacquer soaked into the wood, and made them super durable. So literally I played on a pair of sticks where I taught 30 or 40 lessons a week on my not on an electric kit but on an acoustic kit for over a year before I finally broke a pair of cymbals, or before I finally broke a pair of their sticks.
Wow.
That was the longest, but they lasted a long time. So
okay.
Eventually I'm going to have to look around and find another company. So I think, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's pretty cool. So, So I checked out your YouTube site there, and you've got tons of videos out there. And how do you come up with songs that you could cover to post online? Is it stuff you might be working on for band you're in, or just out of fun or suggestions somebody throws at you?
I haven't really had any suggestions, but mostly, stuff I've either covered in the past or are currently doing, or some of them. And then there's quite a few of them that I haven't covered before. I honestly got a hold of, there's a guy out there that sells a whole library of drumless tracks online, kind of bootlegged collection of them. And there's about 3,000 or 4,000. And I went ahead and purchased all of them and sorted them out by decades. And some of them were really cheesy, and some of them were the original tracks with the drums taken out. So I kind of like sorted through them all. And then when I first moved to Houston, I was splitting my time between Houston and Tucson because we got an apartment here, and I still had my house and my business in Tucson. So my family was here. My wife got her job and the kids started going to school here. And I spent about a year and a half going back and forth. And so when I was here in the apartment, I started putting those drum covers out, and it was on a Roland TD4KP, which I love those kits. They're the ones that fold down really small, and you put them like in a bag over your shoulder.
Right.
So that's really all I had in the apartment, and a few little cameras, and I started doing my covers from there. And then I did some from my school that I had in Tucson.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's very, yeah, that's, I always find it interesting. Yeah, lots of folks that post covers or videos on there, and like I said, how they come about, and as well too, like I said, if you're working drummer and or especially doing covers, you got a lot of things to work towards, and that's something I find is, usually it's whatever the task is at hand, and maybe I don't take the time to kind of be a little bit more doing things out of fun versus doing things out of a task. Hey, all right, here, you're welcome to the band. Here's 40 songs to learn, 3 hour set, and learn this in a week, or so now it's like a work thing rather than just as a fun thing. So Erik, are you full time? I guess I should have asked the question to start off with. Is full time musician? Do you do something
I
on the side?
am, yeah,
Okay.
a full-time teacher and musician, and I have been since about 2003, I guess. Yeah, in Tucson, I was real busy. It was before I was married, and before I opened my school, I was just teaching from home. And I did it to where I taught Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday in a very tight schedule. I opened up 4 hours on those 3 days, so I had 12 hours, and I would just cram it full, and that left me to gigging and recording on the weekends. And yeah, I did that for a good while, and then ended up getting married, and we ended up having some kids. And right before we had our first child, I knew I kind of wanted to try and take it up a notch, so I started Drum and Drummer School of Percussion in Tucson, which I did a 5-year lease. It was it was in 2011, a couple years after the recession, so rent was cheap, but times were still tough, so it was kind of a risk. But I built that out and started it, and it was sort of my baby for a good 7 or 8 years, and it ended up wearing me down pretty hardcore. So I kind of get what you were saying about it not being for the love so much anymore, but all the tasks that you have, and it was between being a janitor and doing my payroll and scheduling and trying to come up with new classes and hiring teachers, and it got to be not the fun, I just want to play drums all day.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So,
yeah. And I have a friend here locally, a good friend in similar, music is his main, his I don't know if you want to say career, but his main thing. He's got a music school he teaches, and he's opportunity to expand, and just recently also expanding to a new larger location. And right now he can't get the new school open just yet because we're all now living in lockdown mode, right? So I mean, how is I think this is very, like I said, we're living through something that will be in the books, will be remembered forever. And how is the pandemic, COVID, affecting you as your livelihood as obviously as a full-time music person, and or your situation there in Houston?
That's a great question. I've been gigging probably 4 to 6 times a month, not a whole lot, and that's sort of by choice. I picked a band that they work quite a bit. They work every weekend, usually 2 or 3 gigs, but I came in as a backup drummer, and so the guys just let me know what gigs you want and which ones you don't want. And they still allow smoking in bars here, so I did a few of those where I just came home just saturated in nicotine, and I was like, I can't do those anymore. Yeah. But so yeah, those gigs are on hold, unfortunately. And then I was also teaching some after school classes at my kids' school a couple days a week, and those are put on hold too. And you know, I'm not even going to try to do this Zoom thing with them because, you know, it's too difficult. They don't have the instruments at home. And
Right.
so I got a couple of students that I'm doing kind of a one-on-one thing with, you know, that have a guitar at home. And that I've been spending the last, you know, couple of years. I honestly have just gotten a little bored with drums. You know, it's like I love to play and I love to perform, and that'll never change. But I'm not really a chops guy, and I get kind of bored trying to learn all these new gospel chops and stuff. So I'm just like, okay. So I've been teaching myself to play piano and bass and guitar and ukulele the last 3 or 4 years. So I've been, you know, pretty busy with all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the I'm kind of a homebody anyway. I'm really lucky that I got to build my studio and spend, you know, as much time as I can in here. And my wife, you know, has a good job she got here in Houston, and she's still working. So far, you know, we're gonna be okay, I think. But as far as, yeah, this is, like you say, it's unprecedented, and with 16 million people filing for unemployment in the last couple of weeks, like we just don't even know what implications are going to look like in the future, I think.
Right. Yeah, and you know, I definitely, and I recall seeing something on the news recently. The governor of Tennessee was kind of promoting about, hey, all right, everyone's getting this bailout money or whatever you want to call it, and trying to encourage folks that have, if they have the opportunity, to try to help the local musicians, because everyone is just suffering. If you're, and again, without music, without, you know, arts. I mean, there was a great quote, it may have been something like even Stephen King had mentioned. Without the arts, we wouldn't be sitting at home entertained, you know, right now, stuck in the house watching TV or a movie or music or whatnot. And it's definitely, it's just really crazy. So no, I mean, I'm glad to hear you've got, you know, a situation there that seems to be okay for you, and trying to keep moving along until hopefully we're all out of this and so forth. So
yeah, I think you're right, though. I mean, it's been I think a lot of people are realizing, you know, what's essential, what's important, and I think a lot of people are realizing that the arts are more important than maybe they were giving credit to before. And I think I saw a great article on just kind of like, we could take this time as a time to sort of reset and reevaluate what's important to us and what we want to do moving forward, you know, not just go right back into necessarily the same grind we were all in. It's kind of a nice opportunity to step back and take a look at things.
I guess they say, right, it's our new norm, which is just, you know, for us, you know, we remember 9/11 and new norms happen from that, and it's just, you know, it's pretty crazy. So so go. So what's your let's talk a little bit of gear. What's your, you know, what kind of piece of gear you got that you're playing with, had at one point, or was it like that favorite cowbell, right? Or you know, or something of that nature, right?
Well, I'm definitely a gear hog, man. And I've pared down a lot. Moving here from Tucson, I sold a lot of stuff. But I've got, you know, 4 kits stacked up back there. And the red one is that first endorsement I was telling you about. It's a company called Hollywood Drums that unfortunately went down in flames. The one next to it that's kind of like, hard to see, but it's sort of like a silver champagne. That's a Sawtooth kit. And it's got some really nice appointments. It's got some really cool features, and I got it shipped for $200, a 4-piece kit. It was like kind of a what were they calling it? It's not a Groupon, but like a daily woot.
Okay.
If you remember that, that company that was so that was a good deal. The one next to it that's got words all over it is actually what I call the word kit, and I wrapped that in a bunch of stickers. It's just a mishmash of different shells that I had laying around. I love building and wrapping kits and, you know, Frankenstein stuff together. And then that green kit is it's actually a vinyl wrap, like a car wrap, but it's a green glitter that somebody did. I was going to do one of those. And then there's this really great shop here in Houston that I found called Rock and Robin's Guitar that's got super cool vintage gear. and I saw that up on the shelf, and I had to have that. So that's what I've got a couple other kits, some Gretsch kits. I'm really big on, I like Gretsch a lot. I used to have a DW kit, but I sold it after I had that for like 15 years. It was kind of hard to sell, but I had to, like I said, I had to pare down. I'm really into the electronic stuff. I've got, 3 different Roland kits, different models. But I've also been kind of a really long project I've been working on and evolving is a project, a solo project I have called DJ Drum. And I started out with me just playing to those drumless tracks, and I picked ones that were real danceable. And I did some gigs in Tucson where like I was just really recreating the drum parts live on an electric kit mixed in with these drumless tracks. And, it was kind of cool, but I knew that's not really what I wanted to do with it, but it was a good opportunity for me to like start to do something with it and put the logo together and do some marketing and put the light show together and all that. And now what I'm doing with it is doing more live looping. So I guess my favorite piece of gear right now is, you can't really see it up here, but it's on this weird looking stand over here.
Right.
There's a Roland JDXI synthesizer, and above that it's a Boss RC505 sampler. So it does like 5 different loops, and they're really independent of each other. So I've just been tinkering with that, and trying to develop some sort of cool show. Mostly it's just for my own enjoyment, just a form of expression, but I hope to someday get it back out in its new iteration.
No, that's pretty interesting because, I was, I guess, complaining, here in Florida, there's a lot of opportunities here close to the water, tiki bars, everyone wants to be outside in the sun and so forth. And I'm sure probably almost anywhere else, really, for that matter. If you're, you're a singer, soloist, guitar player, you definitely can probably keep pretty busy. You got your guitar, you sing, you've got maybe a little bit of backing, or you get pretty steady gig. And like you said, here in Florida, there's a lot of outside bars, and the weather's really nice and so forth. But I'm like, wait a minute, it really kind of stinks because it's hard for drummers, because maybe a drummer can sing, but to kind of make it, how do you make it entertaining? And then what you're describing there sounds pretty interesting. Where you, like I said, it's a one man kind of show there, where it's high energy. You still can take in different beats and samples and to kind of produce that,
Right. Yeah.
So,
and it's sometimes has more of an electronic slant where I go with it, especially when I have an electric kit
right.
Hooked up to it. But so that's another reason why I've been really trying to learn, the theory and be able to play a little bit of piano, a little bit of bass, because it's fun to be able to play a bass loop, get it going, and then drum to it.
Right.
It's just hard to put it together seamlessly to where you can actually do a show. Otherwise it's kind of clunky, and you're like, oh, what should I do now? And you spend 20 minutes trying to develop this loop or whatever. So
right.
Trying to get better at that. So
there's a guy here locally in South Florida that is a singer soloist, and he's got and I have, I can't believe I haven't caught him yet, but I've seen some stuff online, and a few friends of mine, knows him pretty well. And I was watching this video of him performing, and he's playing his guitar, he's sitting, he's singing, and he's got a hell of a setup of pedals, where he's got maybe some sort of drum on the floor or certain things going on, and he's moving his feet around, controlling all this, doing playing his right foot on the 2 and his left foot's on the 1 and 3, and it's kind of keeping that. And it's like, that's a hell of a coordination, right? Let alone trying to use maybe some other electronics that produce a little bit of a backing beat or sort. So
yeah, for sure. That's cool. There's so many people out there doing just awesome creative stuff, and I can't wait to see what comes out of this quarantine time period, with people like really being able to dig in. And it's hard for me. I got 2 kids that are not even into grade school yet, so
right.
that takes I'm so fortunate to be able to have the time where I get to be the one to pack their lunch and drive them to school, and read bedtime stories with them and stuff like that. So like I made that choice to like step step out of it for a while, and you know, hopefully I'll still have some energy
Yeah.
when they're tired of me and they're embarrassed of their parents, that I can come back to, you know.
You probably still got a few more years before that happens, and they're ready to, don't need, not that they don't need you, but yeah, I get,
Yeah.
I have two kids as well, and both of them are teenagers, and I look back and it's like, everyone says it's cliche, but then you look back, you're like, damn, it's so cliche, but they're so right, and time just flies by, and then before you know, it's like all because of Facebook, and you're looking at memories, and you say, hey, show my, son, like, hey, remember this 9 years ago? Look how, and it's like, oh my God, he's almost as tall as me now. So it's, that's definitely cherish. That's great to have that time and to be able to spend with family. It's, a really important thing.
For sure.
But
I love the memories aspect of Facebook, and Google Photos and stuff does it too. It's really nice to get to see those on a regular basis,
Right. So you mentioned Terry Bozzio. Who is anyone else that kind of you said Buddy Rich? You saw Buddy Rich on the Carson's show. Anyone else kind of you kind of glean from and kind of look to say, hey, that's kind of like some of that style that this guy or girl performs.
Tommy Lee was a huge influence on me when I first started digging into playing the kit. I was playing the Girls album, front to back, and White Snake. And that's sort of the era that I grew up in, was playing a lot of the hair rock from them, but also a lot of blues and stuff. I didn't start playing any jazz until I started teaching, which was, again, like after playing for 15 years, and then kind of fell into teaching accidentally, and then started to have to crack the books and how do I explain this stuff that I've been playing, and then I started to realize my own, inadequacies, and start to see where my own gaps were in my education. And I hadn't ever played a rudiment up to that point. I didn't even know what a paradiddle was before I started teaching. So that was sort of interesting with getting into teaching, was just trying to stay ahead of my students, and that was a real motivator to get better and all that kind of stuff. To snowballed. But as far as to go back to your question of, I'd say my biggest hero in the last probably 10 years of drumming is Benny Greb and Thomas Lang.
Okay.
I attended Thomas Lang's first drumming boot camp. It was actually 10 years ago. Came up on a Facebook memory just the other day. So 10 years ago, when I turned 40, I got to go to California and actually help him set up and kind of assist him during a drumming boot camp, but also partake of the 3-day camp. And we drummed 9 hours a day for 3 days in a row.
Wow.
There was 22 of us in a conference room in a hotel, and it was pretty intense. That's sort of what inspired me to want to build my school. And we were all on drumming practice pads, and he had a big old Roland electric kit. And I thought, man, what if everybody had an electric kit? So that's when I built my school. That's what I built, was a drum lab that had 11. I ended up going with the Yamahas at the time. They were the the 500s. Can't even think of the two letters that go before the 500s. But anyways, the Yamahas. So I had 9 kits facing 2 that were on stage, and that was sort of a big, unique aspect of my drum school that I had. And but yeah, Benny Greb, I think he's got the chops of Thomas Lang and of Jojo Mayer and stuff, but I think his musicality and his texture and his tone, the way he tunes his drums and his cymbals, just really speak to me personally. And I just listen to that guy all day long. So
cool. Yeah, it's I think there's again, I'm more later on, and obviously my years here is looking at being a little bit more open to certain music I may not have been open to maybe 10 years ago, or even when I was maybe in teens or 20s and so forth. Again, you kind of depending on where you are and what you're exposed to, right? And at that time, for so we're about the same age, is there was no YouTube, there was no satellite radio, it was just maybe when MTV played music, and or we went to the music store to buy tapes, or Yes Kids, there was tapes, and CDs, Yes Kids, there was even CD thing called CDs, and that's how you got it. And radio was obviously still huge, and the influence you kind of, and then too, you got to kind of also learn to grow out of your range to listen and check out different music, and it's all different styles. And for me, it was probably more so country music. I'm not fully, gone over to that area, but I'm a little bit more open to it, or a little bit more bluesy styles that I'll try to start playing, and rather than just be straight rock and that's it. So
Yeah.
Yes, and that's an interesting is, like you said, starting off doing some jazz and or some of the other starting off roughly in the same area there with rock, but then still growing, and I'm sure you'd agree with this phrase is like lifelong learning, right? Keep
Absolutely.
continuous learning.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. We at the beginning of this conversation, we had talked about it's never too old to start. And I just been helping somebody locally that found me, and I went to his house. He, bought a big old beautiful pearl kit and all the cymbals, and up in his own little man cave. And he's same age as us. He's in his early 50s, and just started out, like, been playing for 3 weeks, and he got hooked up with Drumeo, but he wanted a one-on-one person to come to him a couple times. And so it's been really cool to see people going for it, no matter what their age.
Yeah. I think I think that Drumeo have the lady, like the granny, or the drummer that was on. I think she was playing. I think it was a System of a Down. I think she's playing Down with a, or was it maybe I'm mixing up the songs, but it was one of those two. Yeah. But it was like, wow, okay, she's still rocking it and playing, and there's hope. Sure. There's hope for us.
Well, and I think because it's the information age, and because of the internet and everything's available to us, and the kids that have come up with this and knowing no different, like, they're just getting influences from everywhere. Right. And all these genres are getting mixed up. And I'm a huge Billie Eilish fan. Just ever since she won all those Grammys, I was like, okay, well, I better check her out. And then I just can't stop listening to her. Like, the production quality and her melodies and lyrics is like, there's so much there. And it definitely is, on a kind of a darker and sadder realm, but that still touches us too, on an emotional level. There's I think it's just great. I think it's so cool.
Yeah, that's interesting. That that was next thing I was going to ask you, what's on your playlist, but that's an interesting one, because I'm just the same way. As I think it was probably just last fall, or just again just a little before she won the awards and knew who she was, and checked out that obviously the most popular song that she's got, and it's like, man, it's very catchy. It's very the production, especially the bass stuff, and I think, and for me, a little bit more leaning towards again, not too far, but just still in the realm of listening to whether it's R&B, hip hop, or rap or something. There's always the bass, right? There's always the drums, and there's always a driving beat to it, and really without the drums, what is anything, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's trash.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah, some new music again. That's a great example, is because of the medium that is now exists, to be able to learn about artists that again, if you look at was 30 years ago during that medium, would you have ever even found out? Yeah, maybe the Grammys, because the Grammys is still a big thing, but I've been one of those, like, I think a lot of people I saw on Facebook was like, who the hell is this person? Again, they didn't know who she was even at that time. It's like, well, you don't. It's just this kid's been around. She's been making a name, and she's been cutting her teeth. And just as much. Before she turned 18, for the last 3 years, you go back and watch some old stuff that she's. People been around that you just never noticed. Because obviously there's no attention at the time, and then you look and say, oh, okay. So my point is, some people may feel like they come out of left field, but they've always been there.
Right. Well, it's interesting about her and her brother. Mm-hmm. They were homeschooled, and so they just did music all the time since they were kids, and I mean, they still are kids, but since they were little kids, and something that stuck with me and I passed on to my kids is like they had a bedtime, but they could bypass that bedtime. They wouldn't have to go to bed as long as they were doing something musical. If they were playing together music or practicing or something. So I've been trying to use that with my own kids.
That's a good one.
Yeah. But to go back to your question about my playlist, besides that, I've been listening to a lot of a band called Thievery Corporation, which again, kind of hip hop, reggae, electronica a little bit. Another band called Lettuce. They were nominated for a Grammy recently. We just saw them live in Houston. Okay. Really cool band.
Jam band
that was opening up from them. Yeah, kind of a jam band.
Yep.
Also a little bit of reggae, a little jazz, a little funk. Some cool stuff. I've been trying to kind of go more down those rabbit holes to feed my desire to keep moving on with my DJ drum project and do something like more in those realms. I love funk and R&B and hip hop and pop music. I'm a big Bruno Mars fan and Charlie Puth and some of those. I got no shame when I'll totally admit to loving certain pop music. I think some of it's really good, some of it's not so good either. But that goes with any genre. So yeah.
No, that's interesting. Yeah, because I have a friend of mine who's kind of exposed me to some of that jam bands, and I've never been a big Dead person or a Fish person, and and sometimes even playing the drums, when you're jamming and the guitars, they can solo, and sometimes it's all right. How as a drummer, how do you kind of stay engaged when you're these guys are soloing their asses off and and going around, and it's like, all right, at what point you get getting bored and but so I started listening to some, and it's like, yeah, all right, this got a pretty good groove, and maybe it's a difference between seeing somebody live versus listening on the radio or so forth. And one night we caught a band here who was traveling through town, and just on the whim, my buddy says, hey, let's go check out this band. They got an interesting name. That's nothing more than that. And it was Broccoli Samurai, right? And we're like, all right, what the heck, and we went and checked them out, and they're like a Jamtronica band, right? So there wasn't really a whole lot of singing the song, but it was songs that were certain melodies and things, and a lot of electronic that goes into that. And it was like, wow, these guys are pretty interesting in what they're doing, and cool. Again, some things aren't for everybody, but but I've heard know the band Lettuce and some of this, so I know he'll be interested when he listens to the episode here. That there's some reference to jam bands and so forth. So, no, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So I think we're. Is anything else you want to promote, or got anything?
I guess the only thing, and I've been kind of promoting it pretty heavy on the Facebook groups of different. I'm in a bunch of different drummer Facebook groups. Is the Beatnik Rhythmic Analyzer? That I had won that contest on. Unfortunately, the company went out of business a couple of years ago. Because I had worked with him pretty closely, the president called me and said, "Hey, we're closed. We closed the doors down, and I've got 300 or 400 of these units left over. Do you want to pick them up from me?" And so I did. And so I've sold about half of them already. So there's only a couple hundred left of them in the whole world. They're like an amazing device. Like, it really gives you a visual representation of a little screen on a practice pad. It tells you if you're ahead of the beat or behind the beat. You can set up all kinds of phrases, and it gives you a visual reference down to a 512th note if you're early or if you're late. It's an amazing tool. I used it in my teaching. I've been using it for years, and it's just incredible to see a student like play and then be able to see, and then all of a sudden their ears are hearing. They're hearing it on a whole different level. It just really, it's crazy how it connects the two together. So that's probably the only thing I'm kind of promoting right now. Is I'm still selling those. I sell them on Reverb mostly. I have some on eBay as well, but if you go to Reverb and my store is called Mostly Drum Stuff. I also had purchased an estate from an old drummer that passed away in Tucson that I got a chance to play with a few times. And he was a Juilliard graduate, had a really interesting life. His name was Ken Hawk, and he had played for, I think he played at Grace Slick's wedding, and he played for like royalty and done some really crazy gigs. So he had a bunch of old vintage gear and, like bins full of little, sonar lugs and, throw offs and all kinds of, so I picked up a dozen old snares and stuff like that. And so I'm kind of slowly getting that stuff put up on Reverb, bunch of vintage, knickknacks, but mostly I got the beatniks up on there, and they're great. I sell them for $99 and free shipping in the US, in the lower 48. And I've had people, I just sent one to somebody in Thailand, but it was like $50 for shipping on top of that. But they're a really cool device. And I guess there was a predecessor to the beatnik that came out in the 70s. It was kind of real clunky, but it was kind of a yellow light. It would flash over here if you were early, and a red light or whatever. But it was called the Russian Dragon because you were either Russian or you were Dragon. Yeah. So I've told myself if I ever get a tattoo, I'm going to get a Russian dragon put on my arm or something like that. So
that's fun.
Yeah, but that's about it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you DJ drum.
DJ Drum, yeah, Facebook page.
Yeah.
And my website, I do have a website out there. I haven't refreshed it in a number of years. I really need to do that too. So maybe if this quarantine keeps on going, I'll find the time to freshen it up a little bit. But yeah, that's about it, man. And I really appreciate the opportunity to come and chat with you. And I think it's a really cool podcast that you're doing. And I'd love to see it thrive, and, you interview a bunch of cool drummers and just get to hang out talk about drums. And I'm not drinking rum, but it's still a spirit.
There you go. That's right. Where we say the backbeat meets the spirit, right? Spirit. So
now it's empty.
Yeah. So I guess good timing. So again, Eric, I appreciate. This has been a great conversation about drums and some of the things you've been involved in, and the teaching. That's awesome that you're a teacher for music. Again, you've gotta keep it live, keep it moving, because like I said, without the arts, that's something maybe not all schools still really focus on. It's more of an elective rather than a mandatory thing. Arts and different types of arts as well too, not just music, but but it's still the creativity, right? So again, yeah. So again, I'm glad that we got a chance to run into each other on the Facebook group. Definitely, for sure, I will keep we'll definitely keep in touch, and I'll go ahead and include some of your links there, and we'll check out the for those of you, as Eric mentioned, check out the Beatnik drum pad. There is on his website for $99 free shipping, correct?
Yeah, actually, I'm doing a 20% off social distancing right now, and if you go to Reverb, it'll automatically put the 20% off up until April 20th, 420, and and so it's it's like 79 bucks in free shipping. So yeah.
All right, so
now's the time to get one.
Yeah, so I guess that's just is that 10 days?
And it's just awesome to see people get those. And I'm sorry, what was that?
I'm sorry, I was just saying, had a few more days to go, right?
Yeah.
Act now.
Act now, or sometime in the next 8 or 9 days.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate Eric for coming on, and have a great night, and stay safe. And
you too, Paul.
All right, we'll definitely be in touch. Thanks a lot, Eric.
Yeah, it was nice meeting with you. Nice chatting with you. Have a good night.
Yep. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.